Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is Mick from Yamdu, and today I'll be giving you a view of the production office feature within Yamdu. So I hope all of you can hear me okay, and you can already see my presentation on screen. We'll start with a little slideshow just to illustrate the main topics and the main advantages of using Yamdu as a production management system for the production office. And then we'll jump directly into Yamdu and take a look at all of the main features. So it's not a full overview of the entire system. It's a very special webinar with a very clear focus on most of the beneficial things for positions like the production secretaries and coordinators and the production managers. So let's start with the presentation, and you can see as well that if you have any questions as it goes on, you're very welcome to raise them in the Q&A area. So thanks everyone for joining, and let's jump right in to Yamdu for the production office. So you can see here that all great ideas or all great productions start with a big idea. And of course, the question is always, how do you actually manage to bring those things to fruition? So the production office plays a very key role in doing this. And let me just run on and show you in the presentation here some of the things. The creative process is never a straight line. It's always something that is complex and that involves many, many people. And you can see that when we talk to our teams and we discuss the various ways that they manage their productions, they often do not know what their teams are using. If you ask a producer what the production coordinator is using, often they won't directly know. They might know that it's a file sharing system. It might be some sort of scheduling function, but they don't necessarily know exactly what's being used. So with Yamdu, because you can bring everything under one roof, there is, of course, a key advantage. And moving on here, you can see, and I think this illustrates quite nicely, how communication can be difficult on certain projects. You can see, for example, that with smaller groups of people, communication is relatively simple, but over time it can become incredibly complex, as you see here. So once you start involving many, many people, communicating information, sharing information, everything else becomes quite difficult. And you can see as well here, for example, that the realms, let's say, or the various groups of people that communicate can be quite elaborate. And they move out in circles and various people are communicating with others. So there is information flowing in every direction. Over time, as you can see here, it can become quite complex. And information, of course, has to run in multiple ways, which of course makes things even more difficult. So you can see there are positions like production secretary, production coordinator, assistants, all of these different people. They have to ensure that information is communicated well across the entire team. So that's the exact reason why we built Yamdu, to create something that allows this to be done. And Yamdu is designed as a next level production hub. So everything is coordinated, everything is in one location, and it's also a single source of truth for the entire production, no matter who is working on the project. So you can see as well here, for example, that if we move forward, you have the ability within the system to directly communicate with people. You can tell them the latest information, you can tell them where things are taking place, you can update them, and you can also see here as well that there's clarity on who has seen messages, people can confirm messages, people can reply to messages, and it just ensures that the latest pieces of information are effectively shared with the people who need to see them. Also, you can see here that, of course, Yamdu incorporates the creative aspects of the production, like a script, for example, or a shot list, or a storyboard, or anything else. All of these things can be ingested into the system. And of course, we'll see later, too, that that allows for the creation of sides and DOODs, if schedules are also created, all kinds of information that would need to be collected, stored, and also sent out through the system. And distribution is one aspect that we look at in a lot of detail today because it's a key aspect of the production office. Also, you can see here too that as information updates in Yamdu, as information changes, as new detail takes the place of old information, the system updates that too. So if, for example, someone's day out of days were to change, then immediately across the board in Yamdu, everyone is seeing the same information. Nothing is outdated. It's always up to the minute, so it's quite clear exactly what's going on. And you can see here too that Yamdu, as I guess many of you will already know, is a very large and elaborate system with many, many functions. And of course, depending on your persona, you may only need certain things. But you can see here from development all the way through to post-production that you have all of these different things that can exist within the system. And of course, today we will look at various aspects of this, the kind of IA, the intelligent automation that allows for this interconnected web of information and communication, and also, of course, how we can utilize artificial intelligence, which is a project we've started last year and are continuing into this year, primarily right now with our AI script breakdown, which we'll take a look at, how you can do all of this directly within the system. So we have many things on the roadmap, but for now, you can see that it will become something that is a part of every aspect of Yamdu. And today, you'll see quite clearly too that we're focusing on the production office. And it's already quite clear here on the list, the things that we'll be covering, the things that our client base working in production office roles have shared with us, the things that they have helped us build over time, like watermarking management, distribution, messaging, file management, things like this. And all of these things, of course, get collected then in call sheets and calendars and everything else. But in future, of course, we'll also be doing webinars on various other topics too. But of course, as always in Yamdu, everything touches on everything else because it's a complex system, as we've already seen. So we'll be looking at these various things in other webinars in future too. So today, production office, and I guess all of you would like to directly jump into Yamdu now and get a clear sense of the main features. So let me quickly share my Yamdu interface. The concept within Yamdu, as I'm sure you're aware, is that multiple projects can be managed within the system. We just simply click on any one of the projects open right here. And just to point out too, I can also immediately see information like travel plans. I can see anything that's coming up in the next couple of days. And I can also see my tasks too across multiple different projects and what state of production they're currently in or what state of development they're in. So let's move into one project right now, which is Love at Sunset. It's our classic demonstration project. And here we can see some of the key elements for the production management team. And immediately, again, you see there might be an announcement that's been shared in the group. You might see, again, various things that you have marked during the course of production to keep an eye on. And you have your personal tasks plus an overview of all of the different pieces of information that are being collected in the project in real time. So again, this is a very important primary element within Yamdu, this communication function. I can see upcoming events, I can see announcements within the project, I can see a live feed of new information coming into the project as well. So everything is in one nice view, and I can always see when I jump in what's new, what's changing, what's been updated, new information, new conversations. All of that is quite easy to see directly within the system. And nicely for today's webinar, the very first feature here on our list is crew. And that's where we're going to be spending a little bit of time right now, because when I enter the crew list, I can immediately see everyone that's currently working on this production. So you can see here arranged by department and position, I have the entire team. I can scroll through and I can see who is currently working on this project. What is their role? How do I contact them? What are their, or whether or not they're on set or not, for example. So in one view, I can see this, and it's a live crew list. It's not like an Excel sheet or some Word file where this information is kind of thrown together and which may at any time be completely outdated. With Yamdu, this is always up to date. It's always the latest information. So I can see that information quite clearly right here. I can also add people to my project here as well. So I can invite users to my project, or I can invite people that will not directly be using Yamdu, like external contacts, just to have their information directly within the system, so that if I need to communicate something out to them, I can do that quite easily. And of course, my database is forever growing within the system. So if you do use Yamdu on multiple projects, it is collecting a lot of information that can immediately be reused on future projects. And the great thing, I think, is that when you invite someone, it's not that much information up front. You can add email, first and last name, and position, for example, and the position will automatically dictate the access rights the person has. Those access rights, of course, can be changed right now before invitation or afterwards as well. So I have these abilities to manage that detail very efficiently. I can change access or edit rights to just simply hiding information, or giving someone the ability to see information but not be able to edit it. I can also say someone is on set, so it's quite clear they're not in a production office or not solely offset doing certain work. They're directly on set when we move to production. And with our new time card feature, you can actually directly say that the person has to track their work times as well. Time cards is something we'll briefly touch on later, but it's a world of its own that I'm sure we'll cover in another webinar in future as well. So when you invite someone, you can very easily dictate what they can see and do within the system, and of course change that prior to invitation or after inviting as well. And you can see here too, under the access rights area, that each person, you can see quite clearly, has different types of access depending on what they need to do. So not everyone needs to see all information. That's why you see here some people have more access than others to file and document detail. Some can see sensitive information, some cannot. It makes perfect sense, of course. You would not want someone in a limited role seeing personal information about an actor, for example. And you can see here too that you have an overview of all of the same information you see on the left here is simply reflected here. So at any point I can see exactly what each person can see and do within Yamdu, and I can change that here at any point. And we always joke that when people first see this, they think it's incredibly complex. When they've used Yamdu for about 2 hours, they have a very clear sense of how simple it is and how easy it makes managing that detail. So we have this nice area right here where everyone on the production is listed. We can see what they can see and do. With external contacts, of course, we have non-users who will not be directly engaging with the system, but who we can share information with, and we'll see that in distribution too. And then you can see also in the crew area here, you have some very useful functions. So first of all, you have recruitment, which means you can basically say early in a project, we need to fill a certain role like line producer, but we don't yet know who will actually be the person to take that position. In this case, okay, line producer we've already filled, but hired producer, for example, you can see here, we have not yet filled. So we have 2 suggestions. We can see what the current status is. So what's the recruiting status? Is it pending? Is it rejected? Has Linda, for example, been fixed? And I can say, okay, I'm quite happy to have Linda fill this role. And now Linda is becoming a fully fledged member, as you can see here. So you can invite her as a user immediately right now once you've decided that she's the right fit. I won't do it in this case because I think Linda's already been fixed for other positions, but you can see that it immediately shares that as an external contact, she's now taken the role of hired producer. The other thing too here is that we can also fill multiple roles. It could be that we need 2 people to fill this role, and Mark can also be part of this. Whatever the case is, his information will also be saved and stored within the system, and you can even preset the access rights prior to fixing a person for this particular role. The other thing you can do here is create a job advertisement, which is a very nice new feature as well. So we can say, for example, what it is we're looking for. We can push it to various external platforms, and we partner here in Europe with Crew United, for example. And you can then enter other pieces of information, what kind of project it is, the company details, who to contact, and so on, and basically create a job ad directly through Yamdu and then publish it externally as well. So again, it's a useful function, and it's part of the process of a production office as they start collecting all of the various people that will be working on the project. So just to show you as well here in Crew, we also have, of course, the ability to manage departments. So you can define what a department is, what it's called, and also who should be part of each department too. So I can decide, for example, who's part of the project, should they be displayed or not, whether they're users or external contacts. I can also even create external positions or open positions here, and I can choose whether or not to display these people in the crew list, because of course the production office want to be able to have a very clear overview in crew of everyone working on the project. Also, finally, just to point out, in this very simple example, you can have multiple units as well. You could, when you create a shooting schedule further down the line, for example, have the first unit working in one location and the second unit doing B-roll, for example, or even shooting in another location. We see that with telenovelas and soap operas, where things are often split up along those lines. So before we leave the crew area, I think it's important to kind of not just look at the macro and seeing all of the information on a crew list basis and position and so on, everyone in the departments. I think it's important also to directly look at the micro information. So you can see here James Mitter, the character we're using for this demonstration. I can enter a lot of information. And if I had just invited James to this project, he could also fill a lot of information that would save us time, especially when we're trying to gather all of that detail up front, and it's hard to save and store and manage. So you can see, of course, there's general information like what is James's name, which I guess is pretty simplistic, but then you can see the departments that he's involved in, the mailing lists he's a part of, and all of the other information you can add. It's not just contact information, of course, which might seem simple, but is, of course, vital, but it's emergency contacts, it's home address, it's even home during production, where is he currently staying during the course of this project. You can see the company that he works with. You can also see other details if necessary, sizes. You can see the links and references. So if there are, for example, pieces of social media information that you'd like to have and link to, you can add them here and you can jump directly from them or from Yamdu out to see that information. You can also see, for example, driving license. And one very important aspect of Yamdu is the ability to create crew lists for catering. So we can, if we want to here, see the dietary restrictions, whether or not someone is a meat eater or a vegetarian or vegan or anything else. And we can also see here allergies and other details. And you can even kind of help on a sustainability basis. For example, to ask people if they will always want to eat meat, for example, for a meal, for each meal, or if they will be willing to forgo meat a couple of times a week, for example, to reduce the carbon footprint, for example. But it's not just general information. You also have contract detail, of course, which is vital for managing productions in the production office. You can see here that you can kind of dictate exactly whether or not someone has been onboarded, when they start and end work in terms of the contract or the actual date. And you can see here too, okay, when did we sign this contract? What did we agree? I can upload the draft contract that we were working with and then the final contract when it's done. So all of that documentation is stored within the system. And of course, that also has longer term benefits as well, because if I did work with James, let's say 2 years down the line, I can always refer back to this and see, okay, what was the rate? What was the agreement? How long was he working with us? And all of the other detail that might be very useful for context. In addition to, you have the staff form here, which I think then includes lots of other very useful information, more detailed information, of course, for filling out various forms and for filing details of the production, like the ID, perhaps passport details, visa information for foreign shoots or multinational shoots. And you have tax information and social security and all of the other things that people say they have to log and that they end up adding either in some sort of giant Excel file, or they just try to gather everything and throw it into some file management system and hope for the best. Well, with Yamdu, all of that detail is centralized. Only people with access to sensitive information see it, and it's just making everything much easier because it's all centralized very clearly in one location. And as I mentioned too, of course, you have with the time card function the ability to manage time tracking and do some pre-payroll work as well. And you can then enter kind of contracted work time, salaries, and everything else as well. We have lots of great information on the time card feature in existing webinars. So anyone that would be interested, our Pro Producers feature on our YouTube page is a great place to start and get a full sense of everything that's possible with that function. We can also add notes. We can also see the notifications a particular user sees here as well. So you can manage all of that detail directly in the user profile right here. And it's designed to make it much easier to keep track of a lot of complex information, which of course is key for anyone working in the production office, for communication, for just tracking details, and for having up-to-date information whenever it is needed. So we've looked at the crew area right here. We've mentioned time cards. The other thing, of course, it's not just crew information and crew details. A large part of production office management is, of course, managing information. So Yamdu comes, of course, with an inbuilt file management structure right here. The contract area is even auto-created, so all of that detail we just saw for James is also there for every other member of the production, and it's stored in one place that only higher level members of production can see. You also see here that you can basically create exactly what you want. You can create your rooms, you can decide what they should contain, and you can always then jump in and see, okay, what am I collecting? What kind of information am I managing? Whether it's images, whether it's videos, whether it's exports of various pieces of information. All of that detail can live directly within files and documents. Not even just files and documents, it includes video files. There is video playback. You can send video content out through the system. And at any point too, if you were to click into, let's say, deliverables and marketing, you could view a trailer, or you could send it, or you could even timestamp it and add comments, for example, if necessary. So any sort of content that needs to be managed, whether it's in Yamdu or via a link, can be stored and saved and sent directly through the system, and comments, of course, can also be added as well. And if I jump into development, for example, I have different things like pitches and some character details. And here you see too the script, for example. I might have multiple versions of the script, but I can store that detail directly within Yamdu. As you see here, I can view the script. I can comment on this. I can download it if I wish to. I can watermark it with a custom watermark if I would like to. And I can also share it directly via email. But here you can see, here's my PDF script. It's tagged, or it's watermarked, I should say, with my name on every page too. So if we have a 200-page script and I send it out to anyone, I can use the watermarking function to basically ensure that it's quite clear who this copy was sent to. And if it ends up on the internet, and let's say it's a large project, then we have a very clear paper trail as to how that information got out. But of course, it's just primarily a security function, and you can see here how it looks. So I could send information directly through files and documents if I wish to. And of course, as you see here, I have full access right control and overview everywhere I go. But let's jump to distribution, because over the last few years, we've really focused on building a very detailed distribution management area. So I'll just open it up so you can see more information. So essentially, this area allows you to see all information about what's been sent through the system, who sent it, when it was sent, who it was sent to, the files that were shared, and the current status as well. Please ignore the errors in this case, because these are simply fake email addresses for the most part. So of course, they simply bounce when we send information out. But you have all of this in one overview. So if, for example, your colleague is away and you're wondering if they shared the latest version of the crew list, you can see directly that, yes, they did. Earlier today, it was sent out. It was sent to Casper and James. And ideally here, as you can see, you'd have a nice green column saying opened or read or confirmed, for example, depending on what it is you've sent. So here you can see I have file distribution. I can distribute any sort of file. I can also create and send announcements. This is without a file. It's more like a loudspeaker where you can say, welcome everyone to the project, or be aware information might change. And also in this location, we can manage the mailing lists. So it could be that a department is not quite the same as the mailing list for that department. Certain producers may say, I don't need all of that detail. I probably need one piece of information per month, or I simply will get phone calls if anything serious pops up. And other people might want to keep up to date with real-time information and all of the detail. So you can always control mailing lists. And again, I hope you see again the advantage this provides in comparison to a classic email distribution function, where you send something and it just goes into this void where you don't know whether it's been correctly sent, whether it's been received, whether it's been opened. With Yamdu, we will try to give you as much information as possible about all of those various statuses. So when I want to write something, and of course I can create drafts, it's quite a simple process here. When I click Add on the left-hand side, I immediately have all of the different potential recipients, the cast and crew list, including the external contacts. I have my mailing list that I can immediately draw from as well, and I have an overview of my recipients at all times too. So in this case, if I want to just send something out to Peter and Brian, for example, I can select them. I can add a subject and say, let's say, the new day out of days information. I can write a quick message and customize that detail and say, hi guys, and enter whatever information is relevant. I can even use the personalization function to address people by their first name, for example, if that's what I would like to do. So you can choose how you communicate, how the message should look. You can play around with some of the functions in terms of how the information is displayed. And at any point, I can store information as a mailing list for future use as well. The other very useful thing here is I have a signature. So anything I send, it's quite clear who sent it, my position, the project detail, my phone information, any detail that I think would be relevant to share. I can also import this information from previous projects just to avoid having to do it manually again. And I think two very important functions. I can always send a copy to myself. So if I want a reference file just to have that's sent to me each time, I can choose to do that. Of course, you have to be careful because you may not want to receive a copy for each thing you send. And also importantly, you have the watermark PDF file function. So if you send a PDF like scripts or the DOODs or the sides or anything else, you can watermark every page of that thing for every recipient. So that can add up, and we have many circumstances where that could be 2,000 or 5,000 in some cases, watermarks per distribution. And of course, then that runs in the background, it adds the detail, and basically it does all of that process for you, which we think is quite a useful and beneficial function, and so far our clients tend to agree as well. I can also add files directly here if I wish to, or I can simply pull information out of the project. So because I have all of this information built in, at any point I can say, okay, this is the file I want to add, or I can go to some other area and look at the detail there. And once I've found the information I wish to share, I can essentially then add it. It's ready to go. It's going to be watermarked, for example. I can share it via email or link, depending, of course, on the file size. If I send a video, that information is subject to be sent via link, of course. And we can also even watermark video files as well. So if I'm happy with this, I can send a test email to myself just to be sure that it looks exactly as it should, or just for my own clarity. Or I can check the recipients. I can add an email address or any other detail, and I can send this out directly right now. So it's added then. You can see it's been sent out successfully. And once something has been sent out, I also have the ability to jump in and see what the sending status is. And again, please keep in mind these are not real addresses, so you can see whether it's been blocked or sent, or if, for example, something has been delivered or even opened. So you can see in this example, we can see quite clearly that in this case, the file itself has already been opened. So we have this great overview. We can sort it by lots of different types of information, but it's a very advanced file sharing function. And it's, I guess, the cornerstone of the production office tools within Yamdu, because we know it's a lot more effective rather than copying physical paper or trying to send things out or send via email, and how that can quickly become very stressful because I cannot see what my colleague sent via Gmail or via Outlook, but I can very easily see what was sent here in the distribution hub. It should become something that is highly beneficial on any sort of project where the production office is sharing information on a daily basis, which is, of course, probably every film project, every media project nowadays. So that's the distribution tool. I'll just briefly touch on the task management function. As you're doing things and as you need to make sure things are accomplished, you can create tasks, you can assign them to people, you can set deadlines, and then you have a live overview of the current status, whether things have been done, whether they're approaching a deadline, whether they've gone past their deadline, and that will allow you to communicate with team members. If I'm the person who needs to accomplish something, I will be updated if I'm approaching my deadline and it's not yet been done. For example, I can click yes when something is complete. I can create subtasks. I can add files. We can add lots of context and lots of information. And all of that detail feeds into one project calendar. So again, this is something that's been over the years a wow factor or a wow feature within Yamdu for production office members, because you can see directly in one place exactly where production currently stands, what phase of production we're in. That information comes directly from the production calendar. We can see the meetings and the events and the recce's and the deadlines for our tasks all in one location. We can see, for example, when groups of people are meeting, who's part of the meeting, how long it runs, where it's taking place. So all of this is quite clearly managed for everyone. We can see the off periods for actors. We can also see here, as we move in this project towards the production, the shooting days. We have a 5-day shoot coming up quite soon, and we can see exactly when those shoots are scheduled. We can even see, because we've added a script and created a shooting schedule in this project, what we're planning to shoot on each of these days as well. So you have all of that in one place. We saw the overview right at the beginning. I hope everyone saw that right at the beginning. Perhaps not, but my calendar allows you to collect lots of information in one place. And you can also filter this information too. So you can filter by the categories, whether it's travel information you want to see or other details. You can even see things from a user perspective as well. So you can see, for example, if I want to check on a colleague, how many meetings they're in. If it's something complex and they have 7 meetings today, it just helps me to be aware that maybe I can contact them tomorrow instead, rather than add to whatever work they're doing today, for example. And you can also subscribe to this, so you can take this information out to external calendars should you wish to as well. So each person that sees this calendar also only sees the detail that they're involved in. For example, if something should only be for the HODs, for example, or the directing department, and it doesn't need to be communicated to costume, for example, or any other department, then you can simply make it quite clear that it's just the relevant people that see this on their personal calendars. And since I already mentioned that the information stems from the production scenario, you can see what that looks like here. So here's one that's slightly more in-depth, broken up by day, but we can also zoom out and see what this project looks like over a longer period of time. So this is like a feature project that's running for 6 or 7 months, and you can see how it moves from development into pre-production, into post, and then into release. And we can add dependencies between steps. We can move information forwards or backwards and make it longer or shorter as required. And again, all of that information feeds directly into the calendar as well. So it just makes sure that everything is nicely and clearly managed and collected. So we have all of these different abilities to manage and track detail within Yamdu. I would also point out that if you do add the content directly to Yamdu 2, it is, of course, very, very beneficial. So at any point, you can see here that if you add the script, for example, if you add shot lists or storyboards or content items or anything else, all of it gets collected right here. So you can import a Final Draft script, for example. We partner with Final Draft, and it's possible then to do the full breakdown. So it might be the first AD or the second AD, not necessarily something that we'll focus on massively today, but the content can be added directly to the system. And then, for example, the creative departments can see the information that's added to the breakdown. You can even use the AI breakdown functions to search through the scene information and find the details. As it's done here, for example, it's found old map and it's suggested old map as a prop. So you can see there's this interconnected functionality that runs across Yamdu and across departments. And we can say whether or not old map should or should not be added as a prop in this particular scene. So you have all of this detail, and a great advantage of adding this information is that then you can immediately use it to generate sides, which is, again, one of the primary things that would be distributed through Yamdu from a production office perspective. And at any point, I can go in here and say, okay, I want to create sides, and because I have that information, I don't have to manually choose various scenes using a PDF and try to cut them and add them into another document and try and send that out and try to watermark that and try and track whether it has been sent or not. Here, it's much more straightforward. I can see, for example, the entire script, or I can export the entire script, or I can right away go, okay, the actor who's playing James, David Grandin, has asked for all of his sides, and we can simply immediately generate that for the character or for multiple characters if necessary. We can also filter by shooting days and say, okay, we need the sides for tomorrow, and that's immediately possible because we've created a little shooting schedule from our information. And we can filter by scenes and by script revision colors and all of these other options that you see right here. So again, I think that's a very useful tool. And then you can even define how information should be displayed, whether we need to watermark this file as well, or whether you just want to download it first and then distribute it directly through Yamdu. So you can add colored text and choose what to do with omitted scenes. All of these different things are possible directly through the system. So again, easy to create information, easy to export information. I can also point out, since we're talking about exports, that the crew area allows for PDF crew lists and catering, or for CSV and Excel file exports for more elaborate detail. And the same concept runs throughout the system, whether it's in the script area or in the scenes area. All of this detail can be exported, shared, and stored directly through Yamdu. So you can always see information in lots of different ways and create files at any point to share or whatever it is you may need to do. So now that we have, for example, the script in Yamdu, I'll just point out too that it would be possible to even continue from that point forward and add a schedule. You can use the actual script that you add to create a schedule. And I think this is also beneficial because we recently added our new shooting schedule scenario. So you can see what that looks like. It's much more advanced than the previous version. I have here my list of scenes. I've created day breaks. So for my shooting phase here, we have a 5-day shoot. And I immediately see other relevant details. So if I want to know the day out of days, for each actor on this project. I can see them in real time right here. And if I change that information, if I move the scene, as you can see, it immediately updates that information as well. And if I turn Friday from an off-shooting day into a shooting day, again, now you see James is working 5 days this week rather than 4. So you have that real-time update of information. That's not just here in shooting schedule. All of that information would be pushed out to the actor profiles everywhere else as well within Yamdu. And it's not just the day out of days, it's also things like calendar information. So I could see quite clearly here, for example, what we're shooting when. And if that information changes, I can move things, and I can also see that it updates everything else as well. So you can update information. We also find very early in the development and pre-production process, sometimes people will just simply pull in a script. They will then create immediately, for example, a schedule just saying create schedule based on script pages. Make a day break every 2 pages. You do not need to be a first AD or a second AD or an AD at all to do this. You can simply do this to quickly create, for example, a shooting schedule scenario. So you can do this. We also recently added some budgetary functions, so you could even match that information to the budgetary details within Yamdu too. But again, that's a larger area that we could look at in another webinar, of course. So you have all of these different functions, but the main point is that all of the information is stored and shared in one place. And you can see the general information for the detail 2. You can also see, for example, all of the relevant information per scene as well. And you can see the script. You can also choose the calendars that you work with, like holiday calendars, for example. And let's just quickly save this schedule. But I can also even work offline in this area should I wish to as well. And at any point, and again, today is perhaps not something we'll focus on directly, but I can create a call sheet from this information at any time should I wish to. So I can simply generate a call sheet using the information from our shooting schedule. And in a few seconds, I can create something that includes all of the shooting day information, the crew information, the cast information. You can see here it even shows the locations that we're shooting at, and it allows me to customize this. So if I need to add our page 2 crew list, for example, with call times, with one click, it's there, it's added, and I can then not only save this, but I can save it and share it directly through the system. I can distribute this out, and I can then, of course, also see the sending report as well. So the system will even flag whether or not someone should be part of this call sheet or should be included or not based on their role on the crew list. So again, it's an additional aspect. If you don't create the call sheet, you can also distribute it directly through the distro area. But if you do create the call sheet, or a colleague creates the call sheet in Yamdu, then it can also be sent directly with watermarking and all of the other features that we've already taken a look at. And you can see here too that you have a nice overview. You have a nice header here with information. That's something that you can add in project settings. So you can always here in project settings manage things like the calendars that you work with. So you can define weekend days and holidays and all of that information, even for multiple locations, for co-productions or multi-country shoots. You can also choose whether or not to work with our episodic features, because you can have a project with multiple episodes, with multiple scripts per episode, for example. And you see here too with the export function, you can very easily define what the headers should look like, company details. You can customize that information, and you can then add footers, and you can define which PDF files or areas should be watermarked in the files and documents area as well. And you have copy created watermarks. You can also choose whether or not script sites should be simply required when you generate them in the breakdown area or not. So you have all of these very, very useful features. We also even have customizations for email information, and you can manage other details here as well. So you can see on a content basis how you can store and save and distribute and track information. I think tracking is very, very important. And also, since we were mentioning it, if we go to the creative departments in Yamdu, we can see for the characters, for example, that the day out of days information, the shooting schedule information, has already been pushed to each of their profiles. So we know that the character of James is played by the actor David Grondin. He's in 5 shooting days, or he's involved in 5 shooting days, and all of the other information is stored here. And as we saw earlier, that day out of days information is here. And it's also listed across the board, whether it's for production design or for costume management or for makeup and hair. All of that information gets tracked and stored and saved and shared across the system. And we can also, whenever we need to, export that information with a production design list or all of the other things that might be required in one place right here. Also, just to point out too, locations and sets, this is a very important aspect as well. So as the recce's are taking place, the set information from the script can be linked with the physical world locations that everything will be shot at. So if we know, for example, that we're shooting at RE Studios, again, all relevant pieces of information can be stored and saved here. So that includes, or it creates, depending on address, a map showing where we're shooting, contact information, who's the main contact person, and then, for example, we can add detail to be shared on the call sheets, like how to get to that location, parking detail, all of the other things you might expect, and when, of course, this place will be in use, especially as we move forward to production. So everything, as always, is interconnected and stored and saved and up to date at all times. And one final thing I think we'll take a look at on today's webinar before wrapping it up is the travel function. Another relatively new function that's been running now for, I think, almost 2 years at this point. I say new, of course, that sounds quite old, I guess, to many people. But you can see here that you have the ability to create overviews for cast and crew and extras. So you can see when someone is traveling from one location to another, where they're traveling to, where they're staying, how long they're staying there, and when exactly they'll travel back again. And of course, when does the shoot start? How far out are we from production? You can scroll down and see per person here all of that information. So again, we talked to lots of people in production offices. What we learned was that they created these kind of gargantuan Excel files with very many tabs for each person, and they had no general sense of whether or not things were updated, whether they had been improved, what the current status was, what each of the legs were, who was traveling and when. With Yamdu, all of those different aspects are solved. So you can see, for example, that I have created many journeys here. And in some cases, they've been shared. Some cases, they've just been approved. Some cases, they need to be approved. And in some cases, they're still just draft journeys. And what is a journey? You can see, okay, it's made up of legs. But if we click into any one of these, we can see, for example, how people travel, where they're traveling from, what location they're traveling to, how long they stay there, whether they're flying from one location to another, when they arrive, who's going to collect them, what do they need to know about the driver of the van at the airport that will collect them, his contact information. For flights, even, for example, you can add boarding passes and other details so that everyone can see quite clearly what the plan is. And whenever I send this out, they get, of course, attached a PDF file showing every leg of the journey, all of the details. Yamdu will even factor in that there's a time zone difference between New York and LA. And for example, if it's a 3-hour flight, then you'll basically arrive at the time you departed at, for example, depending on the way you're traveling. But you can see that the time zones are factored in, and you can add flight information and sustainability details that would spread out to the sustainability aspects of Yamdu as well. So all of that detail feeds across the board into other areas as well. You can also track the transportation information, even the vendors that you work with, And you can also see the accommodation detail. Where are people staying? Who are the contact people? What are the contact numbers? How many people are staying where for how long? All of that information is stored and shared in one place directly in the travel area. And just to briefly mention too, because in some circumstances people are very interested in this aspect, all of that information can also feed into the sustainability aspect as well. So in certain circumstances, people need to share and store and even for funding, disclose sustainability details, and that can be done directly through Yamdu as well in relation to locations and travel and energy used at various production sites and things like this, catering information, of course, too, which you've already seen earlier as well. So those are, I think, the primary elements of Yamdu. And just to recap from a production perspective, it starts from the people that work on the project, the crew, all the way through to the file management, the distribution management, task management, centralized up-to-date calendars for the entire production, the overview function. So for sending reports for everything, you can see up-to-date information for you and for your colleagues. You have the export functions across the board, and you have the ability to add also the content information, scripts or storyboards or content items or shots. You can see the production schedule and the shooting schedule, the call sheet function, the travel function, sustainability, and also, of course, the department-specific details. So if I need sides or DOODs or any other information, I can create that, I can export that, I can send it, and I can see whether it's been sent, delivered, and so on as well. So I think these are all very, very useful functions within Yamdu. And just to briefly return to my presentation as well, so you can see this, and I can then maybe take a look at Q&A. Just bear with me for 1 second so that we can see this, and I'll just make sure that it is shared this time, which it is. Again, apologies for the slight mishap earlier. You can see here too that an important aspect of this for communication is also the mobile app for Yamdu, which of course in this presentation I can't directly show you, but I can show you what you would see within it. And it includes information like announcements. You can also see, you can get this in Google Play and in the App Store. You can see the call sheet information. It's also an important aspect for managing the crew list details, contact information, even calling someone directly through Yamdu. That's something that's very, very useful directly through the app. And you can see here too that we would have journey details when you're traveling. All of that information that gets sent out, you can see directly right here. You can also see, for example, the call sheet, the temperature or the weather at the location, where exactly you need to be, all of this, and whether or not something has been confirmed. And as I mentioned too, the time card function also exists here where crew members could even start their day and then log out for their lunch break and then log back in and basically track their work times directly so that the various departments or the accounting team could manage and overview that information directly in Yamdu as well and approve information. So again, approval is built directly into the fabric of the system. So also you can see here too that the mobile app looks a little bit like this. You can see time cards, call sheets, crew list information, announcements, and you can also jump directly into the browser as well if you want to take a closer look at any particular piece of information. So thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate that, and all of you for taking the time to look at Yamdu with me.